Well, I mean, for sure, that part of modern feminism, the intersectionality movement, is definitely taken. Like if you read, don't, but like Feminism for Everybody by Bell Hooks or something like that, they freely admit that, they're borrowing some ideas from very specifically Marx, and then going, of course, and taking critical theory and kind of rearranging it for the sexes. And then also, oh, well, now that we're doing that, let's go ahead and throw in the races in there and everything, and we'll make this very complex thing that takes hours to talk about. But if you don't want to read the words white supremacy every 5 minutes, then don't.
I can find my white supremacy in many other places if I really need it.
Right. So, but she doesn't really focus on that particular aspect. She's really more focused on the concept of like, we have entered into a transhumanist age, and do we want to? What are the trade-offs as human beings? She found this through her own studies on feminism, but it's led her to this interesting thing of like, oh no, this is happening in all sorts of ways. One thing, she doesn't actually bring this up, but the amount of young men looking to get really jacked in the gym. A 22-year-old boy, that's so rude. A 22-year-old guy has no business, mostly, to ever take testosterone. They have plenty. It's fine. You can make your gains, just take your creatine and stuff like that. And you're going to do quite well if you take your nutrition and your lifting seriously. But the amount of young men that want that extra edge just to be a bigger and whatever, they'll go, and you can go to a testosterone clinic. But when you do that at 22 years old and you start taking testosterone, and it's perfectly above board and legal, you oftentimes end up in the situation where that's what you're going to do forever now. And these aren't professional bodybuilders or anything. These are just guys that want to get bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand. I mean, shortcuts are wonderful, but yeah, they don't come without cost. So does she talk about, I guess the two different ideas. So first, did she talk about where she sees this going if we continue with the current trends?
She's more actually concerned not where it's going, but what it's doing now.
Okay.
The idea of like, what are we doing to ourselves? What are we doing to our children? What are we doing to the concept of just staying within the realms of restorative medicine? And she makes no bones about it. She's like, no, I don't want this to happen. Actually, I don't like the idea of depending on chemical technologies or surgeries or things like that for me to merely at some point have to participate in the human race. Can I just have my meat suit that I got when I was born? Isn't that good enough? Yeah. Obviously, if my eyes start to go, I'd like to get some glasses, things like that. But beyond that, beyond restoration, she's like, no, this is we're going to remove what is human about ourselves. She talks quite a bit about how we're not just an intellect being driven around in a meat suit. We're embodied creatures. Our bodies matter. They affect us. They affect us both as men and women and individuals. And everybody has their own unique set of circumstances. But we're all human, and part of what makes us human are these meat suits. But there's so many people, especially with the advent of the internet now that are like, no, I want to just be an intellect, and this thing, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Change it. Can I make it better for me? Can I be, and and she does refer to, she's like, this is a very ultra libertarian version of like, well, this is my body. I can do whatever I want with it. She's like, okay, yes, you can, but I'm not going to say that you should.
So, does she have any thoughts about solutions to these issues?
She proposes 3. One of them is very simple, and this is probably what gets her on a lot of the more right-leaning podcasts and whatnot. Is leave men alone. Like the idea that there are single-sex spaces for men, they aren't inherently bad. She definitely believes that there, of course, is differences between men and women, not just physical, but psychological. She points out a great book, I guess, called Mom Genes, which actually goes through and talks about all of it. They put it, a birth just doesn't just make a child, but it also makes a mother.
Mm-hmm.
All the different things that happen inside, both to just your body, but also to your brain. Your brain actually changes when you go through a pregnancy and a birth and everything else. So she's basically saying, if men and women are different, it's perfectly reasonable for men and women to have their own spaces and them not to be interfered with, and women have quite a bit, and it's very silly because another thing that she also believes, she's like, I don't believe that women make good men. I think good men make good men. And you have to give them the spaces to do that. So, as you can see, she's definitely loved on the right for saying that.
Right.
Her second thing was a concept that she puts up in the book called big romance. And this idea goes back to actually that thing like, well, what does a woman do when the cottage industry goes away? And now that we have the factories and everything else, what do you do? Well, you marry Mr. Darcy, is what you do. Yeah, and that's where those kind of Jane Austen type books really started coming about. Is everything is you find the man that is amazing, and he loves you, and he takes care of you, and he earns well, and he's a great father, and all these other things. And that's great. That's great if you can get it as a woman. But we know that's not what happens a lot, And she feels that the world is not going to get, there are problems, the way she puts it. Like there's a lot of things that are going to make this crazy world that we have right now not so possible. And the world will get harder, and we will probably have the need to become more of the codependent families that we saw centuries past. And trying to, and the concept of this, as she said, big romance, is this concept of, like finding the perfect guy and he sweeps you away and he's amazing. And like all that, I mean, it didn't stop with Jane Austen, the Twilight series,
Yeah.
Millions and millions of dollars a year are made off of these type of stories. So every single romance novel that you have is this trope, basically. So abolish that idea. Start thinking again. Don't look for marriage as a ultimate means of self-actualization.
Mm.
Look at it instead as something like, I want to have a family. I want to have a partnership where we all can rely on one another, and that you're going to be, it isn't all about, beautiful moonlit nights on the beach. Think of it the other way.
Okay.
Don't think about your wedding. Think about your marriage. So that would be the second thing.
Okay.
And the final thing is she would like to see a large cultural rejection of the birth control pill by women. And her reason for this is quite a bit, but one, to kind of slow down at least one aspect of this transhumanism train and have people say, oh no, there's another way of doing this, there's another way of life. But also in rejecting the pill, women would have would get to take back what they had before the pill existed without completely rejecting it. She speaks a lot about this, about how the Me Too thing happened.
Okay.
Talking about how over the last couple of decades, especially, the conversation has been only about consent, and how about a great deal of women consent to things that they're actually not all that comfortable with, but they do. She's like, I actually slept with dudes because it seemed like the more polite thing to do, but I wasn't really into them. I'm serious. And that's the weird thing. When you look at the Me Too movement, a lot of the stories that you hear, yes, there were actual assault stories and everything, but there were also ones where you're going like, well, you did agree to all that. Well, yeah, she did, but she probably shouldn't. And if you're not taking the pill, or at least you're not taking the pill until you're in some kind of committed relationship, then those moments just go away. You're like, no, I'm not going back to your place, and we're not going to fool around because I don't have the pill, and I'm not going to do that, and I don't know you well enough, and I have a perfectly good excuse to not do that. And that main excuse was taken away from women. They're like, well, no, I'm not sure.
That's a very interesting take. I like that. Huh.
And so she's like, I think that this is probably the only way right now is for women to really take back that and not have those situations as much, at least, where they're just doing it out of some kind of politeness or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think that's too. I mean, obviously, it would take some major changes for something like that to happen. But I'm hearing some buzzes around where there are some kind of movement. I mean, some of it's just in the, because some women are having just general issues with the pill itself in terms of its side effects, their mental state, weight gain, other things like that. And so there are some organic movements out there going back to rhythm method. And so it's not outlandish. I mean, when you just first say it outright, it kind of makes you go, oh, we've gone too far for that to change. But the same forces that came together to make the pill, a societal do, there could be a melange of forces coming together that basically push the pill out of the public square. So I mean, it's going to take a lot to do it, but I think it's possible.
Yeah, I don't know how much that movement, but she pointed out, like, and I've heard this from so many women. She's like, I took the pill thinking that it's going to be this liberating thing, but it made me fat, mad, and sexless. She's like, oh, so the whole point of this was so that I could go out and enjoy sex like men do, but now my libido is shot. I'm gaining weight, and it's actually affecting my mental state.
Mm-hmm.
she said the amount of young women that, come off, that they started at 15 and they leave it at, say maybe 25 or something. And they're mad as hell. They're like, oh my God, what did you bastards do to me?
Yeah.
Why did you convince me to take this thing? Because it was clearly not good for me in myriad ways. So I think that there is something to it. I think it would be great, And she's like, we're not going to be able to legislate the pill away. This has to be a cultural movement.
Yeah, agree. Okay, well, it sounds like we've gotten to the end of her book. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Read it. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm going to check that one out, because it definitely sounds like it's a different take on things, and I'd like to hear her voice, especially from the direction she came from, because I don't know, it seems to me to give it kind of a little bit more credence when you have somebody who's like, no, I was there, and I saw both sides of it, and now I've arrived at this conclusion. So yeah, definitely, I'm going to check that one out. Do you remember, is her name in the Modern Wisdom video on YouTube? Okay, so anyone who's looking for that one, just look up Modern Wisdom, and
if you type in Mary Harrington,
Mary Harrington, yeah.
She has been making the rounds all over the podcast, of course, to promote her book.
So yeah, I imagine what's going to happen is she's probably going to get picked up by a couple of the big guys, because as it buzzes around the smaller podcasters and broadcasters out there, other people are looking for information to fill out their time. So yeah, maybe we'll see her on Rogan or Pool or something like that. Give her a big boost.
Right. She's been on stuff like trigonometry.
Mm-hmm.
She's been on a few things that are pretty well known. Not as big as Rogan yet.
Yeah.
but anything's possible.
All right. So I appreciate you coming on tonight. Sorry it took so long to put together, but we still have a couple of other ideas bouncing around that we wanted to go back to. So maybe we'll try to hit on those together. And also, I changed the hours I was doing in my job, so that's one of the things. I'm getting used to my new schedule, so that's kind of messing me up too. So I think I've gotten to the point where things are a little bit more, I know what I'm doing on a daily basis now, so we should be able to set one of these up a little bit quicker than the last time we did this. So all right. Okay. So I'm going to do my little outro, and I'll let you know when we're off the air. So appreciate everyone who came out to hang out with us. Hope you enjoyed the whole thing. If there's things you found interesting in this, please talk about them in the comments below. If there's something you want to hear Colin and I talk about, throw them in the comments below as well. I read all the comments, and if it's something that gives us an idea of a direction to go, we'll definitely run with it. Please consider subscribing to my channel if the YouTube algorithm brought you here and you're not one of my regular subscribers. Smash the like button if you liked what you heard. And if there's somebody you know might find this interesting, share it with them. So hope to see you again in a future video.